This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome to Section 8 notice completion. Last week we did the 17 grounds, or the 21 grounds if you take into account the two subsections under ground 7 and ground 14. So today we're doing a Section 8 completion. So we're just going to go through a form in relation, or a notice in relation to rent arrears, which is by far and away the most common ground or reason as to why landlords are going to seek possession under a Section 8 notice. As you all know, the majority of the people that have been on my training previously will know, obviously, that a Section 21 is being abolished at some stage. So a Section 8 notice and understanding how to complete a Section 8 notice will become much more important to you as a landlord. They are actually relatively straightforward. Obviously, a little bit more complicated than a Section 21 because you've got to explain the reasons as to why you want possession. But it's not much more complicated so long as you know what you're doing, obviously, which is always the hard part. So we're just going to go through a completion in relation to rent arrears and explain what boxes you need to fill in and what information you may need to include within the boxes so that your Section 8 notice is deemed to be valid, because obviously that's the most important thing. It's maybe missing something off and then a defence solicitor or a judge will go, actually, that's not valid for those particular reasons, which I see all the time, mainly around Section 21s, if I'm being honest, but it does pop up from time to time in relation to Section 8 that they haven't filled out or haven't given enough detail in relation to a Section 8 notice. So I'm just going to get the Section 8 notice up. Hopefully my things will work. So I'm just going to go. Yep. So that is the most recent Section 8 notice. So the day, or the date and time of today's recording is, it's 11:08 on the 19th of May 2022, because as you all know, from time to time they do change Section 8 notices. So the Section 8 notice that I'm using today is the latest version. This version was amended on the 1st of October 2021, and that was to take into account the changes to or the removal, should I say, of the coronavirus restrictions. So this is the most recent form. They call it what I refer to as a prescribed form. So you must use this form or a similar form, although in terms of the wording, but I would always say, always use the form that is provided for by legislation. You don't want to get into arguments about whether or not it's similar or to the same effect, because that can be quite costly and quite awkward in court if you go down those routes. So the Section 8 notice that I'm using, again, is from the 1st of October 2021. And that is the most recent version as of today's recording. The first part of it, and I can see it on my screen. So hopefully, hopefully you can read it as we go through, or you can see the wording. But the first part is just about notes for the information for the tenant, just to explain to them why this notice is being served upon them, potentially what their obligations are or what options they do have. As you can see on there, it talks about basically going to get advice from a solicitor or the CAB or the law society or law centre, shall I say, if necessary. So there's information there for the tenant, which needs to be left on that particular form. If you remove that, then potentially the form itself won't be to the same effect. So therefore, it could be deemed to be ineffective. So this is the Section 8 notice, and on the first part of it, or the first page, the first half is to do with information for the tenant. The next part is number 1, and again, that's nice and simple. It's the tenant's name. So let's try and evict Boris Johnson today. So we're going to evict Boris Johnson. Obviously, the names of the tenants would reflect the tenancy agreement. So even though you may only physically give this to one of the joint tenants, it does need to name all the tenants, all the people that are named on the tenancy agreement itself. If there's 5 joint tenants, then you would name 5 joint tenants. Just to make you aware, just to clarify, that a Section 8 notice is not only possession, it's also, in terms of rent arrears, a county court judgment in that sense. A judgment for arrears, if that's the case in relation to the tenancy itself. So the first one, again, is nice and simple. It's the names of the tenants. Now, if you have spelt the name of the tenant wrong on the tenancy, I personally would generally just copy what's on the agreement. I fully accept you may get advice that's slightly different to that. What I don't particularly want people to have is a difference between the tenancy agreement and the notice. I actually had one notice thrown out because they had a Polish name, so there were lots of S's in that Polish name, and my client had spelt, had given, I think they had given one more S on the notice